So, first of all, we just like to know you have worked across prestigious institutions worldwide, like EPFL to Johns Hopkins to IBM. So, what experience or turning points, most influenced your decision to focus on speech and acoustic signal processing?
Thank you, Navas, for an interesting question. So basically, my journey or association with speech and audio data signal processing, machine learning, with it started right here in the Indian Institute of Science.
Hmm.
And I was an MTech signal processing student, and my project final year was on speech recognition.
Hmm.
How to basically now what our Alexa and Siri and those systems do seamlessly almost. Back then, about 17, 18 years ago, this was a difficult, challenging problem. So we were trying to take systems that would be trained on some set of speakers, maybe American or British speakers, where the data was large, and we were trying to adapt it to Indian style of speech of English, how to make the accent, the speakers be more generalizable to these conditions. So this was my final project in MTech thesis. And then, I also started liking the whole area of speech processing, generally natural language processing, and then now more recently about multimodal, both speech and text, speech, text, and image and video processing. So we constantly try to work with speech plus other modalities to build, machine learning systems.
Mhm. Okay. So, can you please elaborate your research work in a very simple layman language, because our readers are not from science technology background. So, just a brief
Right.
about your work.
So let's start, right. So essentially, what is said about human communication? So human communication on a day-to-day basis, what I said is about we communicate about 80 to 90% verbally or with speech. So largely, I mean, this is on an average setting. Of course, different individuals may have more speech or lesser speech and other ways of communications. But on an average, our human communication is 80% spoken.
Mm.
Right? So now when humans are communicating in such large volumes in a speech mode, we want this communication also to be seamless in the form of interactions with machines.
Okay.
So we are trying to build, let us say, one of the core motivations for artificial intelligence is to build systems or machines which are intelligent, human-like, can perform actions which are based on human actions and so forth. Right.
Mm.
So a particular stream of artificial intelligence, which now tries to mimic the communication that humans do, has to also focus on the spoken communication part.
Okay.
So then the question arises, how do we, let us say, right now we are having a conversation purely spoken. And suppose, let us say, if this interview was between me and a machine, let's say
Mhm.
a machine is asking me questions and I'm responding, and then the machine asks questions backwards. So what are the skills they would need? So they would need to first understand what I'm speaking. So that is part is what is called as speech recognition, like
Okay.
recognizing what I'm speaking, what content it is, and then responding back to me, which is what is called synthesis. Essentially, speech synthesis is generation or production of speech. And then
Mhm.
you also add to it a lot of, let us say, contextual knowledge. So right now, this interview for that matter is based on some research topic that I am pursuing here in Indian Institute of Science. And this research involves certain aspects on which basically the interview is going to progress. So there is some contextual knowledge that also goes into this. It's not just producing any speech or recognizing any speech, but there is a domain, a context that I'm speaking on, and the questions that are going to be asked to me are also based on that context. So all this now requires some knowledge, some understanding of the ambience,
Okay.
right? So now in the current day and world, let us say we are trying to build intelligent systems for mimicking, for replacing, for extending
Mhm.
various human skills. So essentially, this knowledge and the background comes from, say, large language models like your chat GPTs, like your Gemini or Grok and other several other service providers who are now developing large language models. So
Mm-hmm.
this large language model development, although it's largely based on text data, like
Mm-hmm.
text is the prime driver of the modality in which information is absorbed by these systems, but eventually the goal for them is to abstract knowledge fundamentally in the text form as well as in other forms, but also utilize this knowledge to respond back in different modalities. Say, let us say I am saying something about speech recognition, say it's fundamentally wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So if there is, let us say, a machine which is asking me the question, and then I am saying something that does not have any factual grounding, the machine can quickly recognize my voice and say that, hey, I hear that you are saying this, but it doesn't agree with the factual knowledge that I have. So
Okay.
now it also tries to embed the context with the prior knowledge, maybe even on the fly, and then start interacting with the user in a much more informed way. Right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
where we are going forward, let us say in future, we want to have seamless communication.
Mm-hmm.
Let's say we want to have, as I said, maybe an interview is going to be taken by a bot. We may have meetings where humans and machines are going to sit across the table, and all of them are going to have joint meetings where the information and flow happens not just between humans but also between humans and machines and so forth.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Various decision makings you want to have additional knowledge, simply some of the skills and capabilities that machines have, we simply may never have it. But we have other skills, so we can perhaps complement and comprehend each other, and then have much more established systems. The other thing is maybe I can bring an anecdote to this point, which is what my advisor used to, my PhD advisor in Johns Hopkins, he used to, in his class, he used to give an example of how humans, let us say, when they think of technology, when think of trying to mimic biology and intelligence, they sometimes try to do it for some years and then they also deviate to create, let us say, different systems
Okay.
and advance or extend human skills. And one of the examples that he gives, which I would like to quote here, is the aspect of flying.
Mm-hmm.
So humans were fundamentally fascinated that birds could fly. This is I'm talking about in the 1800s
Mm-hmm.
when humans looked at birds, what they have as additional, biological organs that let them fly and land seamlessly in very, very small surfaces without having any issue to move in the air, whereas humans cannot simply fly. So they started mimicking what kind of wings should one attach. They tried early experiments with flight. He used to show these pictures where people go up the hill and put these sort of gadgets or sort of physical things that mimic a wing, and they
Mm-hmm.
try to fly.
Right.
And later on, it's advanced to using air balloons as a way to lift your mass up and stay in the air for longer, and then based on your requirement come down and so forth. And eventually, that led us to our modern airline industry. So if you ask the current 150 years of this flying research, what has happened is when we tried to start wanting to become like a bird, we never really have found that level of efficiency that we can never, let us say, land on a tree, or
Mm-hmm.
we can never really land on a branch of a tree with that much precision that a bird does. But what we do have now is systems which can carry 200, 300 people and significant amount of cargo across the air, which no other living organism can do,
Mm-hmm.
right? They cannot transport such large. So while we try to mimic, now we have extended the human skills into flying much more than what biology does. So in artificial intelligence also, as you see, the whole initial era is trying to mimic human intelligence, trying to help follow what we are doing, but machines can do it less precisely. Now we are probably in a phase where many tasks machines are almost getting there close to what human skills can do, and surely we will see on subsets of tasks where machines become much more super intelligent and
Right.
can seed human skills, and that is where we will also extend our own current skills in these things.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, sir, what are the biggest scientific challenges in extracting, meaningful patterns from human speech, especially in noisy or complex environment?
Absolutely. So, right, like again, we can borrow, where information extraction is easier and where, let us say, you might see the large language models have made significant progress is because text is much more normalized.
Mm.
While we all, let us say, write in different handwritings and so forth, but when you type and when you send digital information, all this digital information that you see in websites would have, let's say, if you talk about English and numbers, there are a few hundred odd characters. The ASCII is about 256 characters that you can encode.
Mm.
So all the information is somehow represented with these characters in multiple different ways.
Okay.
Whereas when you come to a modality like audio, each one has very different ways of expression. So my accent, my speaking style, my prior knowledge, maybe I am not a primary English, let's say as a mother tongue individual. I had my Malayalam and Tamil as my regional languages that I was brought up with,
Mm.
and then we are secondary, users of English. And also the people I interact with, my family, my friends, my circle will all shape the way I speak, right? So this natural variation, while this prescribes our identity,
Mm.
it causes different issues when you want to extract information. Like
Okay.
what is being spoken is a function of how much of my accent is, how much proficiency I have in this language, what is my ambience right now. If there is very noisy, I'm sitting in an airport or a restaurant or in the traffic out
Mm.
there while I'm sitting in a quieter office. All of these are going to become functions of how good the information extraction can be.
Mm.
And since, there also opens up opportunities, while these are the challenges that I mentioned. So, for example, you can also use my voice as a biomarker. You can tell me, for example, whether this person who's talking is Sriram or not. So, some banks and some online portals use voice as a way to authenticate a user. Just like you have your password, if you speak some sentence, but the system will tell you whether you are this individual or not. You use
Okay.
your signatures, you use your passwords, then voice is the next level of biomarker. Then you can also use as a health indicator. So you go, you talk sometimes to on phone to your family or friend, they suddenly say, oh, you look like you have a cold today.
Mm.
So you have not told them nothing about it, but your voice characteristics has carried your health signal
So
that has,
basically,
yes.
machines are very sensitive, so you have to be extra cautious, right?
Yes.
This is what you
So
wanted.
speech basically in our discussions also we say is a combination of many factors. One is of course what I'm trying to speak, what is the content of it. But on top of it, there are different factors also come in, which is
Mm.
like who is speaking, where is he speaking from, what health state is the individual. If the individual has a common cold or cough or a hoarse voice, that will also change the speech characteristics. Then you have, let us say, emotional traits. So then also, for example, when you call somebody and you start speaking, they say, oh, you sound sad. So this essentially means your voice contained your emotional trait of sadness.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what the individual perceives. It's not that you have a cold or a cough or a hoarse voice. It's a profoundly different thing to say that you sound sad,
Mm-hmm.
right? So these all are, other biomarkers people call in this field, they call it paralinguistics, meaning these are beyond the linguistic or language level information. These are information characteristics that give you higher level information of the individual who is producing the sound, right? So
Okay.
these complexities add difficulties in processing. So
Mm.
when I want to know what is being spoken,
Mm.
who is speaking, whether the person is emotionally happy, neutral, sad, whether the person has a different accent, whether the
Mm.
person is speaking in a middle of Bangalore traffic and noisy environment, these are all nuisances. So
Okay.
when I'm going after who is speaking, then what is spoken becomes a nuisance.
Mm.
So what happens is because all these factors are combined, we sometimes want to go after only one of them and we try to suppress it. And again, the human intelligence is quite good at it. For example, when I ask you right now, you're listening to my voice, but if I ask you, can you tell me if a fan is also playing in my room? Suddenly you try to shift your attention away from my voice to see whether there is any background. So
Mm.
the human brain can automatically shift or forcefully shift its attention to pay attention to the background versus the foreground, and
mm,
then realize, oh, is that a fan or an air conditioner in the background, or is there some other noise coming in, and then you will respond to it. So we also want machines to do the same.
mm,
You basically pick my recording and feed it in, and you ask the question, is the person sitting in an office, or is he out there in the traffic, or is he at a restaurant?
mhm,
And then you want to basically do, what is the person speaking? So all these are also equally relevant questions that we want machines to respond to, answer to. So we are involved in trying to identify what are the cues that are of interest,
mm.
as well as what are the cues that are of nuisance that we would like to suppress, and see if you can parse the information in these different bins.
So these data, when you gather, so this will be useful for any of your project or any, any other project you are collaborating with any other organization. So,
So sometimes what we do is, so we have different models in which we work with collaborators, right? And these collaborators are also different, diverse. So we
okay.
work with, say, industry collaborators. And even in the industry, it's not like a single uniform piece. So sometimes we work with large industries like the Google, Samsung, Sony Research, and so forth. So we take up projects that are large scale. We
Mm,
also work with startups.
mm,
So work with startups and industries who want to build, let us say, Indian language technologies, who want to build, let us say, technologies for healthcare in
mm,
India and so forth, based on voice. So different companies engage with us in different. And when you take the non-industry folks, we also work with, say, government organizations like a Department of Science and Technology or
mm,
Ministry of Information Technology. We also had projects with the Atomic Energy Department. So different funding agencies also from the government support
yes,
our
yes.
research and fund based on proposals.
Mm,
And in some proposals, it is basically to analyze, extend, or do explorations on existing data. So for which, when we write the proposal, we say we have this data, but the technology is simply not there. We want to work on it for 1 year, 2 year, 3 year period, and we want to push the technology. And while pushing this technology on this data is one example, this is also going to help in, like, improving the technology, so that once it becomes a product on this, it comes to some level of performance.
mhm,
So there are also projects where we see this problem is important and there is lack of data. Say
mm,
I want to understand, let us say, about Indian voices, or in particular, I want to do a recognition system in Canada, or I want to work on Kannada accented English.
mhm,
So if I want to work on specific nuances of problems where data is simply not there,
mm.
then we also write proposals to record data,
Okay.
then to analyze the data, and in most cases, we would also like to release the data. So the data also becomes a product of research. So we
Mhm,
would have a ton thought process about how to design the data itself, collect the data, what is it that we have to record, and from whom should we record. So we invite individuals, be within the campus or sometimes even external individuals, to give us data. So one example of that is the Coursera project that I was involved in for COVID-19 detection from voice
mm,
and other biomarkers. So we simply had no data.
mm,
When we started the COVID project, COVID itself was a new condition, and we also were in the lockdown phase where nothing was possible to go out and record. So we designed a system with a mobile phone
okay.
where individuals who are spread across the country or even the world, when they go to this website, there is an option to use their mobile phone itself as a device to record their data. So
Mm,
we prescribed a set of instructions, and the individuals had to follow the instructions saying, oh, hold your phone close to your mouth, mark whether you have COVID or not, mark whether you had some comorbidities or not, what is your age, gender, etc. was asked, all through the mobile phone, and their mobile itself became our voice recorder.
okay.
And then it goes to our cloud. We work on analysis of that data. We also wrote data as a product to publications and disseminated that data to the other researchers.
Mhm,
So for now, for example, the COVID data that we collected, we have a huge number of so-called citations. So citations is one way to say that people are referring to your work for their work.
mhm,
So people are, let's say, looking at our data. We also see downloads, number of downloads that happen to the data, and so forth. We track them. So several hundred downloads have happened for the data, which would indicate that this data while we recorded it and did our own analysis. Analysis techniques keep changing, but they want to apply this on our data to see whether our data is also, showing the same promise. Sometimes multiple people would have collected data, they combine all of them to build bigger systems and so forth. So sometimes data is there, we perform the research, sometimes we collect the data and also disseminate.
Right. So your lab bridges the gap between speech signals and cognitive neurosciences. So, how does understanding the brain's interpretation of speech inform the development of AI systems?
So what happens is essentially, so our lab is named LEAP, right? So it's called Learning and Extraction of Acoustic Patterns. So we came up with a name which also has some meaning
Right.
in some way that it seems to associate with a movement in technological space. So what we are interested in is understanding how acoustic patterns, which involve speech, and other communication signals that humans use, how we can build systems to understand this. So in some cases, we know partially our systems are at a mature level that we have to push the systems further in the direction to improve their current capabilities. But in some cases, machines are simply not there. So as I told the previous example of following the biology, we want to learn from biology how the humans do some things. So we also have that cognitive, the neural understanding required to, for one example that I told you was this attention. So if two sources of sounds are there, humans are very good at figuring out what they want to attend and what they don't want to attend, and they can suppress. So this in the field is called cocktail party. So essentially you go to a big party room or a big meeting place, lots of people are talking to each other, but when you are trying to focus your hearing to one individual and listen to what he or she says and respond, you're able to do that effectively. But machines simply do not have that capability currently. If you put a Siri or an Amazon Alexa or any device in the middle of a crowd, and then you ask it to pay attention to somebody on the left of the device, or somebody on the on the, about the 45-degree angle from its axis, just say focus on that individual, those systems don't have it, because everybody is speaking to each other. Which signal to pick up, which to suppress, is very difficult. So in our lab, we try to understand in front of those nature how humans do these tasks, what neural mechanisms, what behavioral mechanisms humans utilize, what cues can we learn from humans. We try to design experiments of cognition, of behavior, of electroencephalography. This is basically putting, let us say, some electrodes on the human head and take signals from the brain to know, are they looking at person's voice characteristics, like okay, now this is a person on the left is, let us say, a male, person on the right is, let's say, a female. The individual I am asking, the listener, I am asking them to attend to the male speaker, let us say.
Okay.
So we want to know whether it is the male characteristics of the human voice that plays a role in paying this attention easier, or is it what the person is speaking? Okay, maybe the person is speaking something particularly connected to me that I want to pay attention to it. Although the second person may be closer to me, I find the connection with the other one much more. Maybe that is what resonates with me to pay attention. So we want to know what are these streams that come in, and how we one stream kind of supports the other one, or one suppresses the other one, and you can let the attention flow in one direction. So these human experiments basically help us to prove what current technology can't do, where the gaps are, and partially how we can address and understand how humans do some of these things effectively. And some of the work is basically on purely on the machine learning side. We have some understanding. There are some systems already. We want to push the frontiers in those.
Okay. And sir, after your this sabbatical at Google DeepMind, so how has your understanding of LLMs influenced your lab's research priorities?
Oh, wonderful, right? So this basically, I was like, some one of the fortunate ones to have been, at the cusp of when the LLM started. So I joined around October of 22 for a sabbatical for a year. And then 3 months down the line, after I joined Google, there was a massive change. There is this, initially, it was more like a new technologies coming, lots of users are signing up to this LLM service, ChatGPT service, and lots of interesting responses are coming through. Then it slowly became like, what is happening in these models? How are they able to perform these tasks? So it became a fascination. And then it became to the level that, okay, now, like, a research and exploration of this can be done further to both improve these technologies, but also widen their outreach. Meaning, initially people wanted to write poems or ask factual questions or find trivia from these large language models. But then you start seeing that people are using it for multiple different things now. The extension of the skills, like, can you generate images? Can you understand human voices through models? Can you use them to understand? Now people ask the questions like, can I give you an ultrasound image? Can your LLM take it and tell me what is happening? So beyond this basic language-based interactions, it has moved to far wider schemes. Can you understand financial data? Can you tell me which stock is going to do better tomorrow? So these are the kind of questions even large language models receive, much beyond what initial makers thought about where they go. So when this kind of large language models move up the ladder to influence much diverse set of fields, all these big companies, and that includes Google and Amazon's, the OpenAI, everybody now wants to, like, get into the space, move into it. So that 2 years I spent, 2.5 years close to what I spent in Google, I could see that full plethora of change from a niche language understanding response engines, chatbots, to question answering machines, to broad machine learning foundation models that can pretty much go into multiple diverse domains. So how that has shaped my research. So I'm now back at the campus, and even while partially I was there, I had PhD students to guide to. A lot of our PhD problems and research students that take up are now centered around LLMs. So we start using LLMs as our tool, as well as our machine learning model to advance things which were done with other models before. So for example, emotion recognition is one problem. We used to use other models in the machine learning world, which are typically deep learning based. But recent 6 months or so, we have tried to switch to use large language models. And we have also seen that LLMs have a value in pushing these performances. So we have participated in an international emotion recognition challenge floated by CMU in US. And we ranked officially around third, but unofficially we ranked as the first in it. So we were one of the ones, rarely who used the LLMs for this, and we tried to explore this domain, and we could beat several other systems to get up to the top of this domain. So several other problems of research that we undertake now have centered towards using LLMs as tools, also to explore research on LLMs, how to push LLM technology itself to different levels.
Got it. So, sir, given the growing deployment of AI in sensitive areas, what safeguards do you think must be put in place before such systems are used at scale?
Wonderful, right? So this is basically a question. Actually, whatever you have asked in words is a research problem for one of our PhD students.
Okay.
Right? So this is a very active area of research. What we want to do, and I will try to rephrase this question a little bit. Let us say we ask a question to a model, like you ask, let us say, what is the weather in Bangalore going to be today night? So you are asking the question to know, maybe if you are to take a cab to the airport, how early should you start? That's perhaps why you are asking this question. And the model says that it's going to rain. So for weather systems, now we have the capability to ask, how confident are you? And then maybe some weather systems might say 90% chance of rain. Right? So this is some information that some weather systems also output, not just to tell you that it's going to rain at 11 in the night, it's also a 90% chance of rain. So then you know that, okay, the model is fairly confident that it's going to rain. So I have to be careful. If I have to depart, I have to be a little early so that I don't miss my flight. So this 90% now is an indicator to me to tell that, okay, that's the confidence that the model has in its prediction. Now, if I want to extend that kind of a question, I want to do it for any response that an LLM gives, right? That's where basically the student is trying to focus on, try to quantify the confidence. So if I give a particular question or I'm expecting some response from a large language model, I just don't want only the answer. I want an answer plus a confidence. Right? So you ask simple questions, the weather one, or you ask sometimes a complex question. Maybe we'll pick up that biomedical example I said. Maybe one of the cases is you are going to upload your ultrasound image and ask an LLM to look at it and tell me if this looks like there is a tumor. Right? And then the model might say, yes, I think it's a tumor, or no, I don't think there is a tumor. Then you are simply not going to be satisfied with that yes, no answer and go. You probably want to know how confident is the model in saying that. The model says, no, there is no tumor, and I'm 90% confident of my answer. Then you feel, maybe now I'm reasonably safe. Right? But if he says no, but I'm only 30% confident, then you say, oh, maybe I should go and get myself checked up properly and go further. A test should be taken, or a specialist should be consulted, and additional tests should be taken to reduce the lack of confidence. And so we want to be much more confident in any of these. So this extends to several things, like you're using it for legal decisions, you're using it for financial decisions, you're using it for health decisions. So these are what we call mission critical decisions. And these are like, not necessarily the simpler or the early, as I told you, the NLP or natural language processing questions like write a poem and so forth. If you write slightly different poem, also people are not going to be very angry with the system. But if you say, okay, I know I don't think there is a tumor, and then you do other tests and suddenly it comes back with a tumorous response, then you start feeling worried that, okay, this was a mission critical question and problem and task. So I also want reliability measures, confidence measures. So we are trying to build in, so it's going to take more compute. So people, let us say, as a big set of folks are going behind reducing the compute, because these large language models and so forth are very power hungry and energy hungry. So they use up a lot of GPUs and so forth. But we are taking a slightly different route, saying, hey, yes, they are power hungry, but when you take particular decisions, you are okay to pay that high cost of power to know the confidence. So if I am basically the example, if I give an ultrasound and I ask for a question of presence of tumor or not, I want also, I can pay, let us say, more energy, more time. I can give the model more time and compute to come back and tell not just the no, but also to tell me that no, but I am only 50% confident. Right? Then that's a process that I can use to take subsequent decisions. So where we are working on is to try to build that framework of answers with confidence. So that's the primary. And because the LLMs do lots of varied things, we have a big problem at hand. And this is not just several other folks, different places are also looking at it. So it's not just like, yes or no question. Sometimes you also ask the question, do you think there is a tumor? Tell me why. And then also the model gives you some responses. Then also you need to know how confident it is in its full generation. So it's not just one yes or no, but it might give you a long answer. You want to understand the thing. Then it sometimes might give you a portion of the image and say, okay, this is why I'm doing it. Then you need to verify whether that is a reliable response or not.
Okay, right. Sir, I still have 3, 4 more questions, and it's
Please
already
go.
3:25. That's fine with you?
Yeah, I can go up to 345 if that's okay.
Till 3:40. Okay, fine, sir. So my next is emotion detection from speech is very difficult. So why do you think LLMs struggle with this, and how is your lab addressing these limitations?
So this is another problem that one of the PhD students work on. So the fact of the matter is, emotion is a very nuanced thing, which is that like it's not like everybody agree. So it's a very perceptual, sometimes very individual feel. I can probably feel the sadness in, let's say, my mom's voice if I talk to her. But if my mom talks in the same tone to some other stranger, the stranger may not feel the sadness.
Mhm.
So, because I am used to her in different emotional states, I can associate that sadness very quickly because now I know it's not the natural way of speech that I hear her every day. It's a slightly different, and I can associate that. So, it also has a lot of personal prior understanding about her voice, her way of speaking in a regular day and life versus what she's speaking to me today.
Mhm.
So how do you now build? The machine has only one chance. So you are giving one chunk, or you are speaking one sentence, or you are picking one, let us say, 10-second recording from a movie, and you are asking, okay, this 10-second recording was taken from this movie. Now tell me whether the actor is in a sad emotional state, or is she's
Mhm.
angry, or she's neutral.
Mhm.
So these problems are difficult for machines, partially because they don't have the prior context and the knowledge of the individual. And secondly, data of this nature has not gone into training of these models in a significant way. So
Okay.
models do not have prior exposure to lots of emotional, sentimental data.
Mhm.
Right. So, which is why it has not been a mainstream task for all these LLMs, which is why they tend to struggle. So they might probably say, like, is it a positive or a negative emotion? But
Mhm.
they struggle to say whether the person is angry, sad, frustrated, fear. So these are fine grains of being negative. Or
Mhm.
if you want to say positive, they might struggle to say whether he is excited or happy or delighted or all these joyful. So
Right.
these are different substrates of being positive.
Mhm.
So they don't have that fine grained capabilities. So what we are trying to build in our lab is to go for that fine grained understanding of emotions, sometimes fine grained conversion or generation of emotions. So suppose I am right now probably saying, doing all this interview in a neutral way,
Mhm.
and somebody wants to just have fun with the voices and say that, okay, take this segment and make it sound like the person is very sad. So
Mhm.
then I want to take, let us say, the first 5 minutes of interview, you want to make me sound sad, I must be able to do it.
Mhm.
So these kinds of things have, let us say, where you see application says, let us say I go home right now, I have a Siri or an Alexa device, and maybe I had a rough day and I'm not in the best of my spirits, but I still, ask some information or I interact with my voice system. If the voice system understands my emotional state and even responds to me in that particular emotional state, oh, probably it sounds like you had a rough day. Maybe should I play you some music which is soothing for you or your relaxing music? Versus if the usual party songs that you listen to, should I play you something? So then you will start feeling, okay, now I have much more of a connection with the voice agent.
Okay.
So what we're trying to do is not just understanding, but also converting, but also generating content which is human like, right? Just like your family or your wife or your kids or your parents understand your emotional state and respond to it that way. We want machines also to go to that next level. Currently they just have a programmed way of interaction with the
Yeah.
human. We want to see if we can push them to that level.
And sir, my last question is, what are some long-term goals for the Leap Lab, and and also mention your closing note.
Yeah, so the question was about what are the long-term goals and directions we foresee.
Hmm.
So what I find is that voice technology and understanding and research has been largely in the commercial point of view, which is to develop these voice agents or conversational bots and so forth. While this is certainly also going to persist and also extend its skills, I feel that speech as a biomarker, right? That's the comment that people in the community use or the field use. Is like a biomarker means something that contains or carries your biological traits,
Hmm.
and this could be about physical well-being. Physical well-being, includes, let us say, some respiratory or chronic, or some of the folks also in the community talk about cardiovascular diseases affecting, voice traits and
Mhm.
so forth.
Mhm.
In addition to that, the mental and emotional well-being of the individuals. So these aspects are also carried by human voices, how a person's emotional and mental well-being. For example, folks have tried to understand aspects like depression, aspects like anxiety that is expressed in the voices. So can we basically have understanding of human voice being a biomarker to study some of this? The absolute upside of this is almost obvious, which is that voice is, as I told in the earlier part of our conversation, our significant mode of communication. So it almost comes for free. The recording of a human voice to understand, analyze, to provide wellness for the individuals or understand diagnostics of the individual. This almost comes for free because the data can be easily collected and analyzed. The downside is that it also carries, again, reference to our previous discussions, carries lots of other things in addition to this. So how well can we triangulate? How well can we ignore the other aspects that we don't want to, but focus on the aspects and traits that we want to extract the information that we are after? That's what is going to decide the success of many of this. But I certainly feel speech as a biomarker is a very strong direction, and maybe some of our lab's efforts will also move in that front to push this.
Right, sir. Anything else or significant thing anything you want to mention? Otherwise,
This health is one key direction, and then the other aspect being like speech and voice becoming like natural mode of communication or interaction with the systems. Right, we right now perhaps largely we type into systems and type into our mobile phones and so forth. In particular, mobile phone is a very strong device where voice would make the big change, because typing into a mobile phone is not very easy even for well-trained individuals. Speed is slow, and then the surface is very difficult for typing and so forth. And particularly when you go to next level of subjects and individuals who are not well versed in particularly in writing and those language uses, voice seems to be the most natural way to interact. So the next axis would be like accessing information and accessing technology through voice as a mode of primary interaction would be another key direction. A third thing that we always want to see and push is on the language side. So lots of the, even including the large language models that we discussed, they have primarily been like, English centric, Western centric. So the whole goal of having them as like, key information sources has also been tied to the language. So the example of something like this is, let us say, if you want to understand a fact about, let's say, what happened in the recent war or what happened yesterday in the recent war that is ongoing in the Middle East, if you ask a particular question like that, let's say in English, or if you particularly want to provide a location and ask like what is happening in Tehran right now, if you ask that question in English versus you ask the question in Hindi versus you ask the question in a Tamil or a Malayalam, or let's say even let's say less languages like Konkani, if you ask that question in Konkani to a large language model or a search engine, the capabilities significantly reduce. So this is like, you're asking the same thing is a factual question, but your mode of communication with the system is what is causing the disruption in its delivery. Right. So now how can you build the language bridge? How can we take these technologies to the last mile? Right? They are all centric, they are all centralized for Western population and for English speaking, subjects and individuals. But our large country has significant non-English users. So how do we take the last mile? Even part of my efforts and work at the Google India labs was focused on the India-centric adaptation of various technologies that companies like Google put out.
Right. Perfect. So perfect. Thank you so much. Thanks a lot for your time.